Your brain might not work like everyone else's, and that's exactly why it's your biggest advantage. ADHD, when harnessed properly, isn't a limitation, it's an edge. Hello and welcome back to another episode on the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy. Now for today's personal update, I want to share a game-changing hack that you can use if you're looking at doing a reno, a fit out, honestly anything visual, and you're not an interior design person who can just put it all together in your head. This will help you so much. So at the moment, Nick and I are putting together the design of what we want for the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast studio. And it's honestly been a bit of a struggle for me because I have an eye for aesthetics, but I don't necessarily consider myself someone who can just look at all these different bits of furniture and put it together. And so I've spent a lot of time on Pinterest. I've found things that I like. I've screenshotted and cropped them and then saved them into a folder on my laptop. So if I don't know where it's from or I can't find it, I can actually upload that image into Google so that I can see where it's from. Otherwise, you can ask ChatGPT, but sometimes it's not very accurate or gives good answers. So putting it into Google, I found if I need to find something, that's the best way to do it. The second hack, and this is the most powerful, game-changing thing I could do for my brain to actually bring it to life, I got all the screenshots of the things that I wanted. I went into ChatGPT and I messily explained how I wanted it to look, where I wanted different things to sit, lighting, etc. And then I asked it to generate me a Sora prompt. Now, if you don't know what Sora is OpenAI's version of an AI image and video generator. So I got ChatGPT to give me the Sora prompt, and then I put that into Sora and I added in the images of screenshots I had as reference photos. And oh my gosh, it worked a dream. Like I've had really bad or average experiences with trying to do AI image generation in Sora, but using ChatGPT to create the Sora prompt, I got much better results. So if you're ever trying to get all the different bits and bobs and put it together in one nice image so you can actually see the whole vision, that is perfect for it. So I've had my vision for the podcast studio come to life through doing that. And then now it's just been ordering bits and pieces. And honestly, it's not cheap. Like Nick and I tried to find some chairs and we went in person through some different furniture shops in Nedlands, Dalkeith area. And my gosh, one chair is 3 to 12 grand. So we kind of went, you know what? This is probably not the right place to be looking. Let's have a look at IKEA. That might be a bit more within our budget. But honestly, IKEA wasn't great either. It was really cheap and nasty. It didn't really suit the vibe that we're going for. So it's actually back to online shopping, which has been a little bit frustrating because when I went and tried out these different chairs, and what I mean by trying out is sitting them and seeing how I actually look, I realized there's a lot that goes into finding the right chair for podcasting. If you're doing a roundtable interview or you have a desk, you can kind of get an office chair. But if there's nothing for your body to hide behind and it's just out in the open, you need to find the right chair. It has to be the right height. So when you sit down, if you cross your legs or whether they're flat on the floor, they can actually touch the floor. I'm sure my feet couldn't touch the floor on half these chairs that we were trying. So finding the right height is important. Another thing is also, the height of the armrest. If it's too high, you're going to block off the other person. It might look awkward. If it's too low, if you lean into it, it might make you look a bit strange. And then also the backrest. You don't want the backrest to be too high. You don't want it to be too low. There's just so many different things that go into finding the right chair. Anyways, after scouring the internet for probably about 6 hours, I think I've finally found the right chair that I want to order. So that will be this afternoon's job. And honestly, I've kind of been pushing it out because I didn't want to wipe the bank account clean ordering 50 million things at once And I just went, okay, I'm just going to order the wall slats. All right, that's $1,200. I'll order these chairs. Okay, that's another $900. And then, there's the mic situation. I'm still tossing up whether we go for Rode or if we change to Shure. And then I've still got to organize the 2 walls to get painted black, soundproofing for the back wall. I need a rug for the floor, and then finding which lighting I want, and then if I want any LED tube lights or if I just want to get some cool different light. Like, there's just so many different things that go into planning this podcast studio that between, going to Vietnam, coming back, down to Albany, back to Perth, off to Melbourne, back here, there's just been no time, and I've been honestly a bit stressed. Like, there's just been so much going on that I've just gone, oh my gosh, my brain can't. So coming to do something like this, which should be a creative and fun project, has actually felt very overwhelming, and I have just kept putting things on the back burner over and over again. So at the time of recording, it's the 18th of October. So Nick and I are flying to Melbourne next Thursday, but by the time this episode comes out, we would have probably just come back. So November, I should be in Perth for most of the month and not leaving and going anywhere. So that's going to be my month to get it done. And then December, it's going to be Christmas functions and Albany and bowling and a few other things, and also setting up retreat stuff and clients for the new year. So between everything, it's just been a lot. And so this is actually one of the reasons that led me to want to create this episode, because I realized in my personal updates, there's always 50 million things going on in my life. And I've actually had clients start coming to me saying, why can't I just be more consistent? Or like, I start all these things with so much excitement, but I never seem to finish them. Or my brain never stops. I'm tired, overwhelmed, and constantly playing catch up. And then they'd say something that really stuck with me. I feel like you understand because you've been through this too. And they're right, because for years, I thought something was wrong with me. Like, I told myself that I was just unorganized and all over the place. I couldn't figure out why I'd have all these amazing ideas one minute and then feel completely paralyzed the next. I'd go into deep hyperfocus, work nonstop, and do that for maybe a couple weeks or a couple months, and then I'd just completely crash. I'd miss deadlines, forget important things, or feel like tiny tweaks were too much to handle. And it's really weird because, at the same time of managing such big projects, there were other areas in my life or other smaller things that I couldn't even make decisions on, just like this podcast studio. And so it wasn't until 2022 that I realized I wasn't broken. I was just running a business with undiagnosed ADHD. And once I learned how to work with my brain instead of against it, everything changed. Now, if you're someone who's full of ideas, starts strong but struggles to finish, gets overwhelmed by the small stuff, or swings between hyperfocused and burnout, I can definitely assure you that you are not alone. And you're not broken. You might just have a brain that is wired for innovation. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, Richard Branson, Mel Robbins, Paris Hilton, even Stephen Bartlett, they all have ADHD. And they're proof that this isn't something to hide. It's actually something you can leverage. Your brain might not work like everyone else's, and that's exactly why it's your biggest advantage. ADHD, when harnessed properly, isn't a limitation, it's an edge. It allows you to connect the dots others miss, move fast in chaos, adapt when plans change, and create solutions no one else sees. So in this episode, I'm sharing what it's really like to run a business with an ADHD brain, the messy parts, the superpowers, and the strategies I've learned to stay sane while scaling multiple businesses, going and traveling, working on these projects. I'm just going to share everything with you, whether it helps, whether it doesn't. It depends on your individual circumstances. I know not everything I say is going to apply to you, but take the parts that resonate and just approach it with curiosity, have an open mind, and see if it's something that may support you. So let's get into it. I think the struggle with ADHD is it's not about just being distracted or hyper. Like in business, I find that it looks like you're brilliant at starting new ideas, but unless you have that deadline breathing down your neck, you struggle to finish them. It could be getting lost in rabbit holes of hyper-focusing on non-essential details. The one that I always see my clients do is they decide they're going to work on their branding kit and all their colors, but not post the stories that are actually going to generate them sales. Like it's, yes, it's kind of important, but it's not actually moving the needle forward. And so you spend so much time just pouring all your heart and soul and energy into the things that actually aren't going to get you the result, and you just keep distracting yourself. The other thing that I do, especially on this podcast, is the constant context switching. Like you're jumping from project to project. You never feel like things are done. And I can really relate to that. I get bored if I stay in one thing for too long. So for me, jumping topics in conversation or, moving between all the different tabs in my browser, like it almost gives me this dopamine hit and this excitement energy, but at the same time, I can feel the stress and the burnout on the other side of that. You might feel quite overwhelmed by almost simple things too. It doesn't have to be a complex thing. It might be admin, or it might be systems, or looking at a spreadsheet, when to others that might look like it's really easy. Do you know what actually overwhelms me the most? And I've had to do a lot of work on this. Having a to-do list. I don't know why. Like for me, when Nick and I have conversations, he's always asked me, what are you doing today? What's the plan? And that just stresses me out. Like, why are you asking me this? Look on my calendar, But what I've actually realized is there's a lot of resistance to planning and having to-do lists. And because there's so many different things going on in my head, I'm just like, if I sit there and actually plan out or do that to-do list, there's 50 things, and then I see it and then it becomes real and then it's more overwhelming. And I think that's my resistance to it. Now, since realizing that, I have gotten a lot better at having to-do lists and being able to plan, but I'd be lying if, there isn't that initial resistance to even doing it, because it just overwhelms me so much. Whereas other people, they thrive off to-do lists. They love their to-do list. They're like, great, I can get a feeling of accomplishment as I'm like ticking it off. Me, I will brain dump. There will be a massive list, and then I'll forget to check it for the next 2 years. And when I'm looking through my notes going, why are there 1,000 notes? I actually need to delete some. I'm like, oh, there was that to-do list from like 3 years ago. So that is like the biggest thing for me, honestly. Sometimes having ADHD is just like having that massive resistance to boring tasks. So this is, checking your emails. It might be doing a social media post if you don't enjoy marketing. It might be filling out a financial tracking spreadsheet. Your dopamine is getting a drought. It's not really getting all fired up and excited. So instead of wanting to do the boring task, you just sit there and go, nah, I'm not interested. I'm not doing it. And then it creates that pressure once again of, okay, I haven't done it for so long, that it builds up, and then you feel even more overwhelmed, and then you just don't want to do it at all. And you either wait until the breaking point and you decide to hire help and get someone else to do it, or you find out, hey, you're in big trouble and, this is the problem now. Like this happens so much at tax time. I see it with my clients all the time. They don't look at their numbers until it's tax time. They don't set any money aside for tax, GST. The end of financial year comes, the accountant hands them their tax report, and then they go, oh my gosh, I don't have any of this here. So, being on top of these things, even though they're boring, they are very important, and they can create a whole greater world of pain and trouble if you choose to continue avoiding them. Now, if you're not going to do them at all, find someone else to do them for you. That is the key. Another thing that I find that can come up in business a lot is getting an idea at 10 p.m. Like, when you're just trying to wind down, relax, go to bed, and then you've got this idea, you're fucking wired, and suddenly you're mapping out the whole launch, you're sitting there in your Canva, it's all coming together, and now you just can't wind down. That's a huge thing. Like for me, I think I've got a lot better now that I try not go on my phone after 7 p.m. And, I try to not read entrepreneurial books before bed, because otherwise it just gets my brain thinking. Instead, I'm just trying to like relax or, watch something that my brain can just kind of switch off from, or read a book that is nonfiction. Wait, no, read a book that is fiction. Nonfiction, entrepreneurial, going to get my brain going. Fiction, fairyland, maybe it'll allow it to switch off. I don't know. And I think the last thing that really comes up for me, and I don't know if it comes up for you, but having ADHD in business is feeling that shame when things slip through the cracks, even when you're doing your best. You know, maybe you miss sending that message, or you forgot to follow up on something, or you didn't order the stock, or, you know, you knew you were meant to be doing this for a long time, but you just haven't been able to do it. Like, instead of just going, okay, well, I could have done it earlier, or let's do better next time. Instead, you just sit there and you start hyperfixating and spiraling into this whole, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm a failure, you know, what, like, it's just, sometimes it puts you into that victim mentality state, or you just feel so overwhelmed that you just don't want to do anything and you're just mentally checked out. So look, if any of that resonates, you're not broken. You're just wired very differently than the average person. So the flip side of having ADHD is something that I've come to love. We're often big picture thinkers. We can spot opportunities that others miss. We're fast action takers who thrive in high pressure situations. We're creatively intuitive because our ideas are ahead of the curve. We are magnetic storytellers because we've got big energy and personality. And a lot of the time I find people with ADHD in business, they are very empathetic leaders who truly feel, you know, what clients are going through, what the team are going through. And because they lead with empathy, people stay with them because they care. They're not just seeing you as a number and like pushing you through the door or trying to be part of their little MLM, you know, pyramid scheme. And you know what? With ADHD, as much as it may feel like sometimes you can't get things done or you just can't think or get yourself focused, when big problems come up, sometimes you're just a brilliant problem solver, especially when things go off track. Like, you can just think outside of the box and go, okay, this is the solution that we're going to come up with. And when everyone else is telling you, no, you can't do that, or nah, that's not going to work, you just find a way. So ADHD brains are built for entrepreneurship, but that doesn't mean it's always easy. When I was going through the whole journey of figuring out that I had ADHD, it actually started by having an appointment with a psychologist, and she said to me, like, what are you struggling with? I said, no matter what I do, I just can't seem to find the motivation to do things. And this was at uni, and I wasn't sure if I was like, you know, just dissociative or depressed or just like checked out. But I was like, I can just never find motivation to do anything unless I really enjoy it. And I was just struggling. And I said, you know, I'm constantly zoning out and I can't think straight. I'll be looking at someone and they're talking to me and I'm not hearing the words they're saying. But then on the other side, you know, I'm really passionate and I have this drive to do things, and I'll bounce from 10 different topics and things at once to the other. And that was kind of the turning point of realizing that, oh, okay, there might be something here. So she got me to do this self-assessment. And when we looked at the results, it was like 16 out of the 18 questions were all in the ADHD category. And I heard about ADHD when I was a kid. You know, it's for the naughty kids who run around and they're little terrors, and, you know, girls don't really have it. It's always boys. And I just kind of went, oh, well, what even is ADHD? And I never looked at it as something that was bad, or I never looked at it as something that was going to completely change who I am. I just kind of went, oh, checks out. Those things like forgetting things and not being on time and, you know, not being interested unless, like, all of those are checking out. Wow, that's me. Oh, okay, there's something that they want to put a label on. Another label, great. Cool. So that was kind of my introduction to understanding that, oh, I am built differently. And then I remembered I was looking at going to a psychiatrist to get diagnosed, and I was like, oh, maybe if I had medication, it would help. And then I looked at the cost of it and I just went, nah, I'm not going through that process. So I actually held off it for about 2 years. And it wasn't until I went through a breakup, I decided to live in different countries, and I just was like, my brain is all over the place. I cannot focus. Like, there's just so much going on. There's so many thoughts going through my head that I was just like, I actually couldn't function. And no matter how hard I tried to sit behind my laptop or I tried to get anything done, like, my brain was almost wired for these massive dopamine hits where I would just go do crazy things like leaving Australia and deciding to live somewhere. Like, it was just, you know, I was constantly on the move, and like, I enjoyed that because having that crazy, I don't know what it was, like rush and stress and all of that, that's what felt more familiar to me than stability and security. I don't really know how to explain it, but I finally went to the GP. I got a referral to a psychiatrist, and I probably spent about $2.5 to $3,000 to get diagnosed. And the reason why I share this with you is because if you're struggling with it, like, no one actually talks about how much it costs or like what the process is. So I'm here to break it down with you. So I had mine done through a telehealth appointment. And the reason why it was like telehealth or like on Zoom is because the wait list, I think, is usually 12 months or so. So I was just kind of like, well, nothing's going to change. This is my life. Like, I'll wait if I have to. And then they said, oh, if you do telehealth, it will be sooner. So I had the telehealth appointment probably about maybe 3 months or so after I had originally gone and got the referral and all that stuff. And then I met with the psychiatrist, and he just asked me questions about, what have I been noticing? What do I struggle with? Like, what am I interested in? What am I doing with my life? And I started to explain, and then they did another appointment probably about 4 weeks later with my parents, and they just asked for my school records. They were able to have a look through the comments that teachers would leave and just ask my parents a couple things about what I was like growing up. And then the third appointment was figuring out what medication I would get given, and that was initially, I was prescribed Vyvanse, and it was next level. I felt like I was on crack. Not that I've done crack, but, I felt like I could run a marathon. It just gave you this massive hit of just energy. And then I came crashing down, and then that's when they kind of said to me, have a Dexy, and then that will help take the edge off. And I'm going, hold on, why am I taking this medication and then taking another medication to then, stop that? And I was just, it was getting a lot. And then I think the fourth appointment was a review to see how you're actually going. So that's kind of the process of getting diagnosed. And for me, it didn't change anything. Like, I already knew. I look at my dad, look at who I am, what I've become. Why did we have 8 businesses across the last 18 years? Why were we always running, 2 to 3 businesses at the same time? It was never solely focusing on one. So if you grow up in a family and a life like that, that is your norm. That is what is normal for me. I don't know any different. I don't know how to focus on one thing. And I kind of think about it all the time. I'm like, when we were running the bowling alley, we had go-karts and we had a drive-in cinema. When we got rid of the drive-in cinema, we were running a rodeo and we were running the bowling alley and go-karts. And then it was building the new bowling alley. We had the old bowling alley. There was a rodeo and a music festival. And so when I come onto these podcasts and I talk about what I'm doing, I guess for most people it sounds like a lot, You're doing bowling, you're doing consulting, you're doing a podcast, you're doing that. But for me, I'm like, I already have 2 to 3 things on the go all the time. So yeah, it comes with its downfalls for sure, because it can get very overwhelming and feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on I have to keep on top of. But at the same time, just focusing on one thing, I get bored and I end up leaving. And so it's been this like really toxic pattern. And so going and getting that diagnosis, I kind of, I guess, realized, look, this makes more sense. And at the time, because I'd been going through that breakup and traveling and just everything was a mess in my life, I thought taking medication was the answer. Now, when I started taking the medication, I didn't respond well to it. For me, taking Vyvanse was like having anxiety. It's weird. When I talk to people, I don't feel like I'm an anxious person, but I feel stressed. When I think of anxiety, I'm thinking of like heart palpitations and, that kind of thing. Whereas stress, I just feel pressure in my head. So, taking this medication, I felt like I was going to have an anxiety attack. I would feel this massive rush and then this massive crash. I took it for about a month and I had very severe insomnia, couldn't sleep properly. My body was just in overdrive. And I guess the other thing that I had to realize is that, taking this medication is not going to regulate your nervous system. And so, having no sleep, this huge rush and then a massive come down, it actually started to make things even worse for me. And so that's when, we had the review appointment. We went off the Vyvanse and then I just had the dexamphetamine. And so taking the Dexies, it did help to an extent. I actually felt like for boring things that I wouldn't usually enjoy or want to do, I could sit down and focus and just get things done. But the other part or downside that I didn't realize is that it took away my creativity. And so taking it consistently actually made me lose my spark. And that's the part of me that makes me good at what I do. You know, my ADHD that I now realize, you know, is ADHD. Like that's what makes me a charismatic person. That's what makes me super excited. That's what gives me the innovative ideas. That's how it helps me, you know, think outside of the box and do things that people haven't done. But, you know, taking that medication, it kind of just numbs you out. It kind of just makes you a little zombie that can sit down and focus. But yeah, I just lost the parts of me that, you know, made me me. So what's that looked like moving forward now? Well, I don't really take the medication consistently. I found for everything I'm doing, it does revolve around being a creative problem solver. And so for the most part, if there's like an admin day or something really boring, I might take one, but I actually try not take it all the time. And so the reason why I'm going on this big long-winded story about getting diagnosed and trying different things and seeing what works is because I think for me, I thought being diagnosed and having medication might significantly improve my situation. And I know for other people, it really has. Like, I'm not discrediting that I'm not saying it doesn't work, or I'm not saying that it's not going to work for you. But in my experience, I actually found that it wasn't a silver bullet. It didn't fix things. It wasn't like I was magically cured. It actually made things worse, if anything. And, you know, for me to just focus and sit still and do the tasks that I don't want to do versus me completely lose my personality, my sense of humor, like who I was, it just wasn't a trade-off that I was willing to make. And so, you know, after that, I started to go more down the holistic route, which, you know, I always wanted to, but it just seemed like so much more effort. And, you know, that is looking at, okay, my gut health, and then making sure that I don't have any parasites, and trying to focus on having whole foods and not processed foods, which, you know, I do for the most part. But then when you really dive deep into it, it's like going to a farmer's market, not Woolworths, and, you know, the pesticide, like there's just all these different factors. And then it's just like trying to be healthy and regulate your nervous system. And then living in today's world, you know, social media, there's 50 million people telling you do this, do that, you know, buy this, like there's a cost of living crisis. Oh my gosh, market's crashing. You should save and buy a house. You should do this. I was just like, this is too much. And so, yeah, I think having all these different answers, at least I had them and I wasn't kind of sitting in the dark. But still, to this day, it hasn't really changed much. And so what I'm here to show you or talk to you about is what's actually worked for me and what's helped. That's not medication because I have had to learn the hard way that discipline does beat motivation. I can't just rely on feeling inspired. I need structure to stay consistent. You know, not every idea deserves airtime. Just because I could launch something doesn't mean I should. Focus is more powerful than hustle. You know, I can't tell you the amount of times where I've actually gone to launch something, I poured all this time and energy, it's distracted me away from the real thing, and it hasn't really been worth it. Like, I sabotaged my business to go run a beauty pageant in a different state because I thought it would give me more credit, more status, more, you know, social proof of my achievements. But I actually put myself off the path where I could have progressed further in what I was already doing. You know, there's been other times where I've gone, oh, cool, I'll launch an online community. Everyone else is doing that. And I spent all this time building out the content and stuff. If you listen to the start of this podcast, you would hear me talking about it, the school community. That failed massively because I had this huge excitement for it, and then it just didn't work out because I got bored of it, or it wasn't really when I did it. I just felt like I had to, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Like, if you're listening to this, I hope that some of this is making sense. But anyways, the other thing that I've had to realize is, you know, I need help. And I'm not saying throwing me in the loony bin. I'm just saying, you know, I thought outsourcing meant I was failing. But now I see that as the smartest move I've made, especially with a team who can ground my vision. You know, I have VA, I have OBM, I have a manager, I have team, I have like all these different people in my life now that I can actually lean on. And I used to pride myself and think, oh, yep, I'll just do it all myself. No one can do it as good as me. And this is the standard and stuff. But it's forced me to become a new person who goes, okay, how do I lead others? How do I show them the way? How can I train them up so they're as good as me, if not better than me? And if I'm not great at it, who is the expert that I can hire that is? And, everything starts to get easier. Your business grows faster. You're less burnt out. Just accepting that you don't have to do it all yourself. Like, you can get help. That was a huge shift for me. When I look at the way I was running my life, I had a lot of avoidance and resistance to systems, but now I can understand, see, and vouch that systems do protect your energy. My brain needs visual cues, reminders, and structures. So being able to have my Google Calendar give me a reminder every half hour before whatever appointment, going to bed, eating, it just helps. I'm a very visual person, so having things that I need actually out, not packed away. I know it's a bit messy for Nick, but at least I can see it and I will remember. But if I put it away, I forget it exists. It's so bad. So it's just like figuring out what works for you. Like if you've got a system in place that can help, whether it's a step-by-step process, it's where you place something to give you that cue, it's a notification, like use it. Because to put that pressure on yourself to remember everything and have to do it from scratch every time, that's unfair. And the last lesson that I've really learned is that my value isn't in how well I can do everything. It's actually in staying in my zone of genius, which is strategy, marketing, vision, creation, profitability, like calculators. Probably listed off too many there, but like that's what I love doing. I don't love sitting there building out my website. I don't love building out automations. I would rather pay someone who is an expert to do that for me. So as I've been, more aware of this and I guess going through different seasons of my life where, look, there's been times where things have gone really well and there's been times where it's felt like it's all falling apart. The practical things that are really helping me is doing daily brain dumps. So each morning in my calendar, I have at 7 a.m. like a half-hour block, which is just like my planning and communications. And so it's either in my notes or I physically write a to-do list depending on what I feel like on the day, to be honest. That's exactly what it depends on. I will write down the list of tasks that I need to do, and then that will help me stay focused on like, okay, what are we doing today? And then in terms of do I need to do this or can someone else help me, I will then message my team on Slack and go, these are your tasks if they haven't already been planned out the week before and they need to be prioritized. So like that's the first thing, daily brain dumps. Now, to also add one more thing to that, if you want to take the pressure off yourself, just choose a top 1 to 3 things that you need to achieve by the end of the day. You don't have to do your 20, 50 task to-do list. Like literally as long as you get the first 3 things done, that is amazing and you can celebrate that. And that also teaches you to prioritize what's most important. And then the other smaller things, if you see them in the list, it's good because you can actually delegate them to other people. So you're getting that support and not just paying them. They're sitting around figuring out, oh, what should I do? Like you've got something you can give them. The second thing that's really helped well is time blocking by energy. So for me, I know when my best energies are, and that's in the morning. So wake up, have my pre-workout snack, go to the gym. I've got a fresh mind. Being able to work between 7 and approximately 11 a.m., that is my best time. So if there's anything that's a big project, it needs creativity or it's like clients, the morning is the best time for me to do that. So I will protect those hours. I won't go to appointments, like personal appointments, or I won't decide to go shopping, if I needed to go food shopping or whatever it is. I'll always do that stuff in the afternoon because I know the mornings are my time. And so if you can start looking at when are you most productive, when are you most focused, and then use that to leverage in your business, you will see massive results. But if you keep going, oh yeah, I'm burnt out, I'm tired by the end of the day, and then you're just forcing it, you'll never get the quality or results that you actually could potentially be getting if you were working in your best hours of the day. Now, the third tip that has worked for me has been having theme days. So Friday is my finance day. It doesn't matter when or where, like I do block out time in there, but if I have, a couple appointments, I can shuffle, but I just know Friday, that's my finance day. Monday, that is podcast, copywriting, post for the week, like anything, that kind of stuff that needs to be prioritized because it didn't get finished in the last week, that's Monday. And so if instead of blocking out the perfect time, because I get it, life can come up, at least if you dedicate one day for getting one thing done in a certain area of your business, then you will feel like you're on top of the world, like as long as you get that thing done. And that like stops you from constantly tasks like switching. If you're sitting there and you're going, okay, I'm going to do finances. Okay, now I'm going to go into my Xero. I'm going to do payroll. Oh, I'm going to do a marketing piece of content. Oh, I'm going to call up this client. It just creates more chaos for you. So just pick what you're going to do on that day and then stick to that to keep it really simple. The fourth tip I have for you is sprint style working. Now, I perform under pressure. But give me safety, security all the time in the world, I will procrastinate. And so what I've started to do is I use 60 to 90 minute focus sprints with breaks in between to avoid burnout. So I like personally going to the coffee shop. This is so bad. And basically my sprint is have a coffee and then see how long it takes me until I need to go to the toilet. And I have IBS, so it could be, 60 minutes, it could be 90 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, who knows. But most of the time, if I have a coffee at 7, by about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I really need to go to the toilet. So then I'll go to the toilet and then I'll end up walking home because the coffee shop's just down the street. That's how I get my focus done. I don't know if that's the best advice to share, but, you could set up an alarm clock like a probably normal person would and then let the alarm clock go off and you would be sweet. But by giving yourself pressure and the time, if that's what you perform well with, then do the same thing with your tasks. Like treat it like a little video game. Another tip that has helped me immensely, and I love this because I actually get kind of lonely as a business owner, like as much as I have my clients and things, and I'm sure you're the same, seeing clients in clinic and stuff, it's still, there's this level of loneliness. And so I do co-working. So there's 2 ways I do co-working. One is I call someone up and we talk on the phone. I do this with Jade from Lavy Lash. I'm not even joking. Like if you saw our call history, like we call daily for the most part. And sometimes our calls are like 20 minutes. Other times they're like 4 hours. But just having someone else who's in a similar position as you working on a business or doing something like that, that can be really handy. Otherwise, it might be going to a cafe with a friend and you don't have to talk the whole time. Like you could just literally be working on things and you just order coffee, you chat, you have some food. Like I love doing co-working. Like if you're in Perth and you want someone to go co-working with, hit me up in the DMs because I'm down. Friday, I actually have booked out as my self-care day. And Fridays are usually the day that I'll either get a facial, I'll get a massage, or I'll go do some co-working with a friend. So being able to just get yourself out of your normal environment and put yourself in a different place, especially with someone else, it just helps you stay focused or just, I guess, helps recharge your batteries because you're not getting bored by doing the exact same thing over and over again. Now, the 6th thing that helps is accountability structures. I will usually tell my team or audience when something is coming and then it forces me to deliver. And I know it's probably not the best strategy, but it works. Like I've announced that I'm launching a podcast, and then all of a sudden, okay, I got to launch the podcast now, I claim it, I put it out there and then I do it. But, back when I was talking about launching the podcast, I really wasn't sure. And I think as soon as I announced it online, something switched and I was like, okay, I need to make this happen now. So sometimes, having that accountability, putting it out to your team, a friend, your partner, whoever, just instead of like thinking, okay, I'll get to it at some stage, like talking to someone and then saying you're going to do it, then you fucking follow through and you do that because that will help for sure. Like it makes it real, right? There's a lot of things in my life that I'm like, oh, I'd like to do this. And then I just kind of put it off. But as soon as I announce it on social media, it means, oh, I have to do it. I actually used to do that for when I was going to the gym or going for a run when I first didn't have the discipline to do it. And then I was like, oh, better put my running story up to actually show that I'm doing it. So yeah, you can try that, see if it works. Now, the seventh thing, and you know I preach about this all the time, is VA support. Andre has been an absolute game changer for me. Like, I absolutely adore her. She's been with me for the last 3.5, almost 4 years. And she helps me stay on track because I've actually implemented a new process this year where at the end of each day, we give an update of all the tasks we've done, which I should have probably said this earlier in the episode, actually. That is a game changer within itself. If you sit there and you have someone, whether it's a friend or whether it's a team member, and you send a recap of the things you've done, it actually holds you accountable to sharing what you've done, but also it gives me a sense of, oh, I actually did a lot today. In most days where I feel like, oh, I haven't done enough or, oh, I should have done more, I can sit there and I'm like, wow, I actually did like 5 things. That's insane. So being able to actually have someone to support you is important, and then give you some reminders. Like back to the whole Andre thing, sometimes we'll work on a couple of projects, like for example, the retreat. So I'm building out the retreat social media marketing like template vision I want, and then I'll say to her, can you build these out? So it's got one for each day. Or it might be, these are the emails I need done, can you please build them out for me? And so when she comes back and she's like, here's the emails I worked on, I'm like, oh, I completely forgot about them, but yes, I need to schedule them. So just having someone else to bounce ideas with, and then also keep each other accountable with little updates of what you're working on, that can really help. And the last tip that I don't think all of us do enough is celebrating small wins. I think it's really easy to wait for a big milestone and then feel like, okay, now we celebrate. But if you don't celebrate the small wins and you don't recognize them, you will not feel it by the time the big ones come. And so if you're constantly feeling burnt out or there's pressure, or it's just like, what am I doing this for? It's probably because you're not celebrating small things enough. And so like that daily checklist of things you've worked through, or like maybe the big goal is that, you know, you win this award, but along the way it might be the application process, the announcement process, like all these different little steps, like still celebrate them. You don't have to celebrate by going on a holiday or buying yourself something expensive. Like it's sitting in that moment and feeling that excitement and appreciating that win, because that will keep your dopamine systems filled. So just to recap on the 8 things that work well for me, you've got your daily brain dumps, time blocking by energy, you've got your theme days of the week, sprint style working, going to the coffee shop, co-working with someone, whether that's virtual or whether that's actually in a cafe or wherever you choose to go, accountability, putting it online, telling your team, VA support, actually getting some support, not trying to do it all yourself, and then, you know, giving yourself giving each other recaps, and then lastly, celebrating small wins. Now, the last part of this episode I want to share with you is some self-care reminders, because I feel like amongst all of this stuff that I've spoken about, there's been no order, no structure. It's just been me thinking about things that I've wanted to talk about off the bat. And, you know, the last thing that I want to take away with you are some self-care reminders, because I didn't do self-care for a very long time because I think I tied my self-worth to my achievements and big dopamine hits. And so what I've had to learn this year, especially through having a mindset coach and PT and Nick all at the same time constantly say this to me, it's finally hit, you know, rest is productive, especially for an ADHD brain. You know, burnout will sneak up faster when your brain is constantly stimulated or overloaded. So what you can do is actually schedule in your guilt-free rest before you hit the wall, not after. So this is why I actually have scheduled Friday self-care days, because if I didn't schedule it in, I won't do it. And I'm the type of person who, if I'm not working on my business and my podcast throughout the week, I'm working on the bowling alley on the weekend, or if I'm in Albany, I'm working late nights doing, customer service and all those kind of things. So it's just like there's always been something in there, and I feel guilty to slow down. But like for you and me, also taking my own advice here, like having that self-care day, it doesn't have to be a whole day. It can be literally an hour. Just scheduling in something once a week to actually put yourself first and fill up your cup is more than needed, especially as a business owner. Like you're not going to be able to have your creative ideas and push through if you just keep trying to tick off your to-do list and have all these different achievements and burn yourself out in the process. It's just not going to work. So rest is productive. Another thing is you don't have to earn your breaks. You're not lazy for needing more space between tasks. Rest, movement, nature, and naps are all valid tools for emotional regulation and clarity. Like I would sit at my laptop for anywhere from like 7 a.m. to like 8 p.m. if I was super hyper focusing on things and I was interested, and I would forget to eat. It's like I know I need to go to the toilet, but I won't because I'm just so like I have to get this task done, and then I won't stop. I will just keep going to the next thing. Like that's what it looks like when you're going, oh, once I finish all these tasks, then I'll earn my break. But no, you don't have to wait. Like, finding that short period of time where you can go hard, get that work done, and then go eat, go for a 15-minute walk, like look out, enjoy the sunshine. It's summer now. You don't need to sit behind your laptop or work on clients all day. Like even if you can just spend 5 minutes to just go outside and get out and just break that cycle and have a break for yourself, not blasting podcasts, not blasting music, not trying to fill yourself with more information, like literally just be present. That is also super important. Nourishing your body is also going to help regulate your brain. So if I created this episode so when I fall back into these patterns, I can listen back to them and be like, okay, you've said this publicly, you need to follow what you're saying. But basically, skipping meals, too much caffeine, or forgetting to hydrate will absolutely impact your emotional resilience and focus. If you're feeling like, oh, I can't come up with any ideas, I'm tired, I have no energy. Well, if you're not eating breakfast, oh, I forgot lunch because I was on meetings with clients or I was seeing clients, and then, oh, I haven't been able to drink as much water. Like there's just all these basic human needs that we start to avoid because we're so focused on working. You actually need to think about, what am I putting into my body? Don't have coffee on an empty stomach. I always now make sure that I have breakfast and drink water and wait an hour before I have coffee, because when you're having that coffee straight away, it's just putting your adrenals and your nervous system into overdrive. It's not good. Now, another thing to remind yourself is that you can start your day feeling accomplished. Having a routine for your mornings is really helpful to set yourself up for success. Your ADHD brain will crave dopamine. So start your workday with one small, easy win and tick it off so you actually feel like you're building momentum. My morning thing that I do is actually just planning out my day. At least if I know what I need to focus on, then I'm like, great, I can do that. And in the days where I'm in a really bad slump, like no motivation, no idea what to do, I'll actually just do something so simple it seems stupid. Like I'll just reply to an email and then I'll tick it off and I'll be like, oh, I've actually done something. Yay. If it doesn't have to be some massive project to just tick it off. It could just be something small. Now, if you know your energy windows, you need to protect them. Figure out when your brain works best. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? And then make sure your creative or decision-heavy work is done within that window. And so if there's other people who want to take that time, have boundaries and say no. Like if you have ADHD, maybe you're a people pleaser, maybe you're not. You're like, oh my gosh, do I have to do this? And yes, I'll just overcommit and do all these things. But like actually find peace and know that it's okay to say no. That's a huge thing that I've had to really step into this year. And I think coming from a service-based industry, like we are naturally wired to want to help people and serve them and do things. And oh my gosh, what if we don't do it in time? And then it's like that. But it's like you can't give to anyone else if you're burnt out or you're at the stage where you're just like, I have nothing left to give. Your nervous system needs cues of safety. And sometimes it's not the task that's overwhelming, it's actually the mental pressure about it. So being able to do something that actually gets you excited to do a task, whether it's music, lighting a candle, sitting somewhere comfy, like having that small sensory shift, that can help reduce avoidance. So instead of getting to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this, like I'm avoiding it, instead go, how can I make this exciting? How can I make this fun? How can I enjoy this more? And, you know, the one thing I think we always do, especially when I look at, you know, my business owners and I go, okay, when are you, you know, how many weeks of the year is your business operating? And then they'll tell me, I only need a week off. I only need 2 weeks off. I work the rest of the year. And they usually wait until they have that 1 or 2 weeks off in the year to actually like enjoy and relax. But, you know, micro self-care, finding, you know, little windows or, you know, once every few weeks you've got a day where you do something for yourself, that is going to be a lot more productive and valuable for you over waiting for that weekend when you're going away. So, you know, simple stuff like literally breathing, meditating, like just pausing and not listening to anything and just being present. I used to always think those things were like stupid, but now I've started to realize, oh, no, it was stupid because that was the thing that my body was craving, but it was more wired for the chaos and the overwhelm that it didn't want to know about that feeling of safety or security. So like finding ways where you can actually ground yourself and reset your nervous system, that is going to be super powerful. And like the last self-care tip is that, you know, you're actually allowed to do less and still be successful, because reality is your less is still going to be way more than the average person. You know, when I feel like I'm not doing enough, I'm still doing 10x the amount of things that other people wouldn't even think of doing. So being able to look at, okay, what am I currently doing? What's not serving me? You know, when am I taking the time for myself? Like prioritize putting you first, because when you have ADHD, I think that pressure, that overwhelm, you know, the stress that like, you know, and then the excitement of all these ideas, like there's just so much going on that you want to do it all at once. But realizing that it doesn't have to happen today, it doesn't have to happen tomorrow, but as long as you're working towards it in a productive way where you're still looking after yourself, you can still achieve that goal. It's going to be okay. You know, ADHD entrepreneurs often overcompensate to prove that they're capable. But at the end of the day, you still need to build a business that works for you. Slower days, smaller capacity, or simplified offers aren't a failure. They're a strategy. And I've said this many times on the podcast, you know, everyone starting out in our industry or in business in general, they dream of being fully booked. Like they think that when they're fully booked, life is going to be great. But you talk to anyone who's fully booked, they're like, I'm so burnt out. You know, I'm exhausted. I have no time for myself. And so, you know, being able to review how you're running your business, how many hours you're working, what you're doing with that time, how your energy levels are tracking, you know, you create the business to work for you and your lifestyle, not for you to become a slave to it. And so this is why you really want to get clear on, okay, how am I setting myself up for success? How am I actually protecting myself here? What could I do to improve my situation instead of just spiraling into this negative pit of thoughts and feeling like, oh, it's never enough? Now, if you run a business with ADHD, your brain is not a barrier. It's just a completely different operating system. You don't need to do business like everyone else. You need to do it in a way that works for you. And the sooner you stop judging yourself for how your brain works and start building around it, the faster you'll scale without burning out. Now, if this episode hit home, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to hear your experience or share tips if you're navigating this too. And if you're ready to build a business that works with your brain, not against it, and you just need someone else to help you put the pieces together, like whether it's setting up the strategy, whether it's how you're actually managing yourself. Like this is stuff that I'm working with clients on every day, believe it or not. Like as much as the marketing strategy, the profitable pricing, like all these things come into play and they are powerful. Most of the time it's actually coming down to how are we managing you? How are we getting you to show up as a better version? What's actually needs to be set up in the business so you can perform best? If you need someone to walk through that with you, Book a free strategy session using the link in the show notes below, and let's help you find your solution together. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that this has helped you in some way. And I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Audience exclusive.